All right, good morning, everyone. I hope all of you who were at Campus Dance, which I heard was very crowded this year, enjoyed yourselves. Thank you for getting up and coming to our commencement forum. So welcome, I'm Wendy Lee, and I'm the Associate Director of the Pembroke Center for Teaching and Research on Women. The Pembroke Center is delighted, along with our partners, the Brown Women's Network and the Brown Sports Foundation, to be sponsoring today's forum, reflecting on Title IX at 50, women athletes and their lives at Brown and beyond. So this academic year marks the 40th anniversary of the Pembroke Center, which was founded a decade after Pembroke College, the Women's College of Brown, merged fully with the Men's College. As the greater Brown community marks 130 years of women at Brown by honoring the past, present, and future of all women of Brown and reflects on the journeys of the members of this diverse community, the Pembroke Center is delighted to celebrate its groundbreaking research on women and forms of difference and its teaching, curatorial, and community building missions. To learn more about the Pembroke Center and our partners in the Brown Women's Network and the Brown Sports Foundation, please scan the QR code on your programs. And on this, now that we all know how to use QR codes because of restaurants, I only recently learned how to use a QR code because I went to a restaurant last year, and my students showed me how to use it. So on this 50th anniversary of the enactment of Title IX, it is of course fitting to welcome a panel of terrific Brown women who together have changed and are changing the landscape of athletics. Our moderator today is M. Grace Calhoun, Brown class of '92, and parent of 2 Brown students in the class of 2026. Grace began her tenure at Brown as Vice President for Athletics and Recreation in April 2021, following 7 years as the Director of Athletics and Recreation at the University of Pennsylvania. She is regarded as a national leader in collegiate athletics with nearly 3 decades of experience strengthening programs for student athletes and steering national discussions around the future of college athletics. At Brown, she concentrated in electrical engineering, graduating magna cum laude, and competed on the track and field team. Grace earned a master's degree in exercise and sport science and a PhD in higher education administration from the University of Florida and an MBA from Lehigh University. Grace, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you for your work shaping this panel and for leading our conversation today.
Well, thank you, Wendy. And I also want to straight off thank Martha Hamlet for getting us organized and really pulling this all-star panel together. I feel very privileged to be able to moderate with 3 superstars to my left here. And I'm looking around the audience and thinking, what a wonderful celebration of 50 years of Title IX and seeing some of our old guard in the audience, some of our current coaches, some of our young ones who are probably just learning what Title IX is. But what a wonderful way to celebrate today. So thanks for joining us on a super busy weekend. So first year back at Brown, and while I celebrated as a student and came back to my 5th reunion, all these jobs in college athletics and working at other universities prevented me from coming back until this year. So 25 years later, being able to be reminded of how fun it is to have the graduations and the reunions and all our governance meetings and everything happening at once. And I think I heard there were about 17,000 people at Campus Dance last night. So it's a fantastic and festive atmosphere. And again, we're here to celebrate an amazing and very important milestone in girls and women's sports. So I'm joined today by Katie Guay, who is a class of 2005 graduate. She became the first female to officiate in the American Hockey League in October, which is really kick butt. I've got to keep it G-rated because we have kids. All right. That's what you call smashing some glass, ladies and gentlemen. A business, economics, and psychology concentrator, Katie was a 4-year member of the Brown women's hockey team, and we've got some superstars in that group as I interacted with many around graduations this past weekend, and of course we've got Kim and Salako on our staff. You're reminded that we were not only the first women's collegiate hockey program, but how many of these amazing women went on to do really profound things, which just again shows the power of sport. But again, a 4-year member of the women's hockey team. Following her playing career, Katie swapped her stick for a whistle officiating at all levels of ice hockey. In 2016, she was the first female to officiate NCAA Division I men's hockey, and in 2018, she officiated at the 23rd Olympic Winter Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea. She skated in the NCAA Division I Women's Frozen Four Finals in 2019 and 2021, and also attended the NHL Officiating Exposure Combine. In addition to officiating, she works in sales at the tech-led apparel company Squad Locker, based in Warwick, Rhode Island. Welcome, Katie. And on my far left, your far right, we have Dawn Chuck Kane from the class of 2002, celebrating her 20th reunion. She coached swimming. Yeah, that's worth a woot-woo, and I've got my flag here. There's going to be plenty of flag waving, I can promise you that. She coached swimming for 16 years at Duke University and recently began her current role within the same department as the Director of Student Athlete Development. While at Brown, Dawn was a 4-year member of the swimming and diving team, 2-time Ivy League champion, NCAA qualifier, school record holder, and recipient of the Arlene Gordon Award. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology and received her master's degree in human performance from the University of Florida while continuing her swimming career. A native of Jamaica, Dawn is a 2-time Olympian in 2000 and 2004 and was a national team member from 1996 to 2004 and served as a national team coach on 2 occasions. Welcome, Dawn. And then we have our elder statesman, none other than Carolyn Norris here. Carolyn joined Brown Athletics in 1983 and coached field hockey for 10 years before becoming head lacrosse coach for 6 successful years, during which she boasted 5 winning seasons. She took over the field hockey program in 1998, coaching her teams to 5 winning seasons and the 1999 Ivy League championship. As Senior Associate Athletic Director and Senior Women's Administrator, Carolyn oversaw training and mentoring programs for coaches and diversity initiatives and was chief advisor for academic and non-academic student-athlete issues. She pretty much ran everything student-focused, right? Carolyn graduated from the University of Connecticut, where she was a 4-year letter winner in field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse, and a member of the 1981 National Championship field hockey team. She officially retired from Brown after 38 years in October, in October 2021. And following her retirement, a $1 million fund was established named the Carolyn G. Norris Fund for Student Athletes to support student athlete services at Brown. The gift is the first of its kind to focus on academic enrichment, leadership development, and mental health. So as I don't have to say, again, we are joined by 3 just remarkably accomplished, talented women, and we're so excited to hear your perspectives on Title IX. So without further ado, let's hear from you. So we set this up to, we'll start with just a quick hit question. We're going to get into a participation-based question for each of the panelists and then hear about some of their interesting experiences, stories, or aspect of Title IX they particularly want to highlight. So to kick it all off, Katie, why don't we start with you? Tell us what brought you to Brown.
Sure. So growing up in Westfield, Massachusetts, playing a collegiate sport was never a thought. I played sports because I love to compete. I love to have fun and make friends on the field. I think the first Division I women's college game I watched was during my official visit. So I grew up following the path of my older brother and sister who played hockey, soccer, baseball, softball. And so I followed them and played those sports all the way through high school. I played on a boys' hockey team, youth hockey, all the way through 9th grade when I joined the high school team. And I was often the only girl in the league all the way through 9th grade. And I loved being part of the team, having fun. You know, I was one of the team until 9th grade. My locker room moved to the women's bathroom. And so that's when I realized that, in hockey, we're lucky to have a locker room. So many great memories come from that atmosphere. And I then, had my bag shoved under the two sinks, parents coming through, siblings in the bathroom, and parents would ask me if I played hockey, very shocked to see me getting equipped in the bathroom. And so that's when I think a little bit of the fun was taken away from me. And so I was fortunate to have a coach, a youth hockey coach who also officiated ice hockey, who went to a prep school game, and the coach there asked if he knew of any girls that played hockey, and I was fortunate that I played for him, and so he introduced me to the coach at Deerfield Academy, and I was fortunate to go there where I played 3 years of girls hockey, which really opened my eyes to opportunities beyond the high school experience of sports. And so once I got there and I realized that other girls from my high school were going on beyond high school to play sports, that's when I realized that it was a possibility. And so once I visited Brown, it was my first choice, and I wasn't high up on the coach's list at the time, but I just kept telling the coach that Brown is my first choice, and it wasn't until after spring break of my senior year that I was finally knowing that Brown was where I was heading the following year. So I was psyched to have the opportunity to play 4 years at Brown, and some amazing experiences while I was here.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Dawn, same question to you. What brought you here as a student athlete?
Yeah, so similarly, actually, growing up in Jamaica, competing in college isn't really a thing that we really think about. And so it really came down to, we had a stroke clinic where an American coach visited and did a clinic with us. And he actually said to my coach, like, she's kind of good. Do you think she wants to swim in college? And usually I think being in the Caribbean, now it's more prevalent where you go to swim in the U.S. But at that time, I kind of just was like, well, I don't know. Normally you just stop swimming after high school. And so he said, well, is it okay if I give your name to some coaches that I know? And so I said, sure. And Matt Kredich happened to be one of them, and he recruited me here to Brown. And I think that just speaks volumes to how recruiting works, and the fact that, and I hate to say it, but in Jamaica, the colleges you hear of, unfortunately, are HYP, and I didn't really know anything about Brown, and so Matt gave me a call, and the whole recruiting process got me here, and I visited similarly in the spring of my senior year, and again, because we don't do the SAT in Jamaica, I was telling my teammates up there that this morning, I didn't visit until I think January or February of my senior year because I hadn't taken the SAT yet. And so, it was, just the whole recruiting process and Matt getting me here and visiting and loving all the things about Brown.
Thank you, Dawn. So, Carolyn, you came here as a coach. What lured you to Brown?
Yeah, so for me, I didn't go to Brown, but I do feel like I went to Brown because I was here for 38 years. So for me, I grew up in Wakefield, Rhode Island, and my dad was a baseball coach at the University of Rhode Island, and he had connections at the University of Connecticut. And I went to UConn as a walk-on, and I think my junior year, I was given a $1,000 scholarship, and that was like a big deal at that time. So I went to the University of Connecticut, played field hockey, lacrosse, and ice hockey in an outdoor rink for all the ice hockey people. Probably don't remember that. It's enclosed now. And then my senior year, the women's field hockey coach, Julie Dixon, came up to me and said, "What are you doing next year?" And I was like, "I'm not going to Brown. We beat them 8-9-0, And then my college coach, Diane Wright, said, the Brown coach wants you to come work with them. And I was like, and this woman I looked up to, she was a mentor to me, and we'd just come off a national championship. So I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I can go back to Rhode Island. And I started as a second assistant, making $500, and the rest is history, as they say.
Dawn, I'm going to go back to you and ask you to talk a little bit more about what you described to me as we were talking on a Zoom call last week in terms of your youth experience in the sport of swimming. And specifically, it resonated because as a gymnast growing up, I felt like there were a lot of opportunities for girls in the traditional Olympic sports. So whether it be track, gymnastics, swimming, sports without a ball or a puck. But talk a little more about the reasonably equitable opportunities you saw as a child, and if there were any maybe difficult for you. I don't know how much you traveled to the States as a child, or can compare what was happening in Jamaica versus in the States at that time, but talk about that youth swimming experience.
Yeah, so I learned to swim at 4. My dad was on the chair, I think he was the chairman of the YMCA, so it was one of those things where he was in a meeting and he said, you guys go swim. And so that's how I learned to swim, and then I started competing at 6. But I think exactly what you said, like the Olympic sports and some of the sports, like you said, swimming, gymnastics, track obviously is huge in Jamaica. So those are the sports that you kind of get into, and then tennis is another one. So I think with those, it definitely was more of an equal playing field. I never really thought of like swim. I mean, I always swam with boys, it was a combined team and all of that. So I think it was equitable in that regard. In terms of traveling and competing, I don't think I traveled to the U.S. for competition until I was about 14. And I think it was very similar to what I saw in the Caribbean. We did travel a lot between the Caribbean countries, which is awesome. And, I think it was the same, at least in the sport of swimming, where it was, boys and girls kind of competing, obviously not against each other, but in the same meet and all of that.
So you hear that, and I'm thinking about the fact that for me, I don't think there was an option to do any kind of ball sport until late middle school, maybe even high school. And Katie, you talked about having to play on a boys' team and using the bathroom as your locker room. And I can guess, going back, Carolyn, to your time, talk a little bit about sports growing up, but then the early years of coaching, where I would imagine the landscape for men and women was completely different at that time.
Yeah, and I think for me what was eye-opening when I thought about these questions, actually really made me think about my trajectory, was I played on the baseball team, Little League, growing up. I was the only girl on the team, and the first game I went to, the umpire wasn't there. So my dad came out of the stands and umpired the game. Then I was on the bus with him when he was at University of Rhode Island, and so he always said he was pre-Title IX, and I was the back girl and ran around, and I just thought it was normal, and when I really think about it, it really wasn't. So very inclusive that way. Is from a coaching standpoint, I could talk for 5 hours about what has changed, and some things have still stayed the same, but I think what has really changed is obviously the support. The amount of people that are involved with the holistic approach to sport and to coaching and taking care of everything, not just the game and the recruiting, as far as the mental health piece of it, the leadership piece of it, the personal growth piece of it, as you've seen recently what's gone on. So that's really changed a lot. I think the other piece that changed, the number of coaches, I coached 2 sports. And so I was going to Cornell 3-4 times a year. When we were able to, the progress was being able to split sports and just be the field hockey coach, it'd just be the lacrosse coach, it'd just be the women's soccer coach. So that changed. I think what I did early on, not knowing it, is I vested in everyone, male, female sports. So we used the football bags when we traveled to Penn, and it said on them Brown football. That would never happen again. And on the foot, these guys know, I got 3 of them here on their 20-year reunion, which makes me feel old. But then again, when Phil Estes, who was the football coach at the time, when they had to go to Penn, he would come to the roof and practice, and I knew he needed the prime time to be there. Coaches got very caught up on what time we're practicing, but I knew he had a different pressure on him than I did. And I think one of the bigger factors I think that has also changed is women are now held accountable for wins and losses. where before they would stay in a position forever and ever and ever. And it's somewhat become a business that way in my eyes. So I just hope we don't lose the educational piece of what we're doing. And on a personal note, I need to say that Grace is the right person at the right time to lead our athletic department.
Well, you are very kind to say that. And as Carolyn knows, we've got 3 of our women's head coaches here, and we do pay them more than $500 a year now. So we've made some good progress there. Katie, talk a little bit more about the growth of girls and women's hockey and what you've seen as the transformation in the past couple decades now.
Yeah, I think Title IX has played a huge impact in the growth of the sport of women's hockey. In 1990, there were 6,000 females, girls and women that played ice hockey in the U.S. 1998 was the first Olympics, where we had some Brown alums representing U.S., Canada, and Japan. And that obviously impacted the growth of the game as well. And then 2010, there were about 65,000 girls and women in the U.S. playing hockey. In 2020, it was upwards of about 100,000. So I think the amount of opportunities for the girls starting at a young age have just, I mean, it's unbelievable to see the amount of girls playing on girls' teams, competing at girls' nationals across the country. And, you know, and I love watching little girls cheering on Division I women's hockey. It's amazing to see what they're able to strive for. Like I said, my first Division I, watching my first Division I women's game was on my recruiting trip, and now they get to see these women play at a young age and then, you know, set their goals and dreams much earlier. So I think Title IX has played a huge part in that, the amount of opportunities across the board, and it's amazing to see the growth of the game due to Title IX playing a big role in it.
Carolyn, I'm going to go to you and ask you to share a personal story regarding equality in women's sports, kind of a softball, whatever you want to talk about that just really sticks in your mind as a great story around equality in women's sports.
Well, I think for me, where I coached 2 sports. Being the head coach of field hockey, there was never a male counterpart. So I was like, compare me to football. So with women's lacrosse, I always had the men's team. So that's where it really struck me. Like, I always felt like I had to work harder for the field hockey, 1, to keep the program alive, and 2, to get the funding and where it needed to be. And we're fortunate to have Britt Brody here, who's our field hockey coach. So kind of pass the torch on to her. So for me, it's just been a trajectory of little things along the way. I think what happened for me, which was transformational, I used to be the mad Title IX woman in the room. Then I realized that was not working. Then I became quiet, and that didn't work. And then I said, you know what, I have to engage everybody in the room with what I'm trying to do. So I was usually the only woman at the table as I went through coaching and the different committees I was on. And then when I came into administration, I was the only woman at the table, and all the way to actually sitting with President Paxson. So I knew it was an important role, but I knew I had to engage the men in the room. So if I vested in their ideas, hopefully they would vest back in mine. And became great partners of mine, and the coaches did too. And I never really had as much conflict as I've heard some, but I worked at that. So I vested in people, so they vested back in what I was trying to do.
Very smart. Katie, talk a little bit more about what it was like to referee that AHL game as the first female official, and what kind of reactions and feedback you've gotten in that role.
For me, it was another hockey game. For the league, I was a novelty. I felt pretty prepared going into the game. I had reffed Division I men's college hockey. I was really fortunate to have a mentor in Paul Stewart, who was an NHL official who was assigning ECAC men's and women's at the time. And after several years of working for him on the women's side, he approached me and said, I think you have what it takes to work on the men's side. And I just laughed him off, and he said the same thing the following year, and that's when I really gave high-level boys high school hockey a shot, and spent some time at that level for a while to prepare me for the college level. Have had some great ambassadors along the way. Bill Coakley, class of 72 here, is a supervisor for the ECAC League and was very supportive along the way. So I felt prepared heading into the AHL for that first game. The league certainly, being a novelty, it was made definitely. The media was brought in for the event. For me, I headed to the rink just like I would for any other game and was ready. And then the commissioner came into the locker room before the game for a photo, and a bunch of the league was there after the game. I had to talk to media, which media never interviews referees. So they definitely made the game more significant because of having the first female there. So that had the adrenaline flowing a little bit more than any other game I had done up to that point. But once the puck got down, and then I was able to just do my thing on the ice, I felt much more comfortable. And as far as the players, it's their livelihood, and I think at the pro level, there's a lot of chatter with the officials, and oftentimes they're just questioning our judgment out there as officials so they can understand what they need to do to stay out of the penalty box. So as referees, we're reacting to their actions, and so I think they like to question our judgment just so they understand what the standard is for any given game. So my goal in any game is to be treated just like my colleagues, and I felt at the men's college level and at the AHL level that I've been treated with respect just like my peers, which is really all I can ask for out there.
So Katie and Carolyn, you both hit in different ways on that theme of having these male advocates who really helped to understand that change was needed, and to also advocate with you, or to see something in you, to give those opportunities. And I have found throughout my 30 years now in college athletics that a big thing we're seeing is the fathers who now have daughters that are playing, and how we're getting more and more male advocates that are looking at those experiences and wanting to ensure that their daughters have the same caliber of experiences as the men do. And it's so fantastic to see that advocacy coming from all ways. I was at a reception yesterday, and you may not know that the engineering class here is a balanced 50-50 in terms of men and women. And when I got to my senior level classes, I was typically the only female in my classes. And I can remember at the time, I was constantly questioned. And in fact, my faculty advisor, as I was starting off, took a look at me, kind of glanced at my high school background, but basically said, "You're not qualified, you should drop out now." And I always say, I don't know that engineering was the right major for me, but I felt this like, no one's gonna tell me that, I'm gonna go. And then along the way, when things got tough though, there were a number of male faculty who really became very supportive. And I often think about, that help and those men that became those advocates to help ensure that women got those opportunities. So it's wonderful to see some of those strong male advocates in the room today. Looks
I
like
just
you
have
wanted
one
to-
thing to add. I don't think I need that microphone, but I'll continue to use it. I also think television has helped. So there's a lot of women on TV now. Never before. I think our NCAA championship was the first game televised for women on ESPN, but we had to go to the ESPN office in Bristol to watch it on a screen, and we thought it was like the greatest thing. So obviously technology has been a game changer, but you turn on the TV now and you see women doing a variety of sports.
Don, talk about what you've seen in terms of additional opportunities for women in sport, and what kind of impact these opportunities can have.
Yeah, sure. So what I think of, and just real quickly, I actually was an engineer my freshman year here, and I did figure out that it was not for me. So I did switch out of that. But so, just in regards to more opportunities for women, the thing that comes to mind was I coached, like you said, for 16 years at Duke, and when I first started, we were non-scholarship on both the men and the women's side. And I think, it was a new head coach, and so they were looking to invest more in the program. And after a couple of years, they said, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of women's scholarship to work with. And then we got a little bit more each year. And then somewhere like in the last 7 to 8 years, I think it was around 2014, 15, they actually made a big announcement that they were going to add softball, and they were going to fill out the scholarships for the rest of the women's teams that were not fully funded. So swimming was one of those, and that was huge, you know, just to provide more opportunities for a whole new team to bring softball to the campus, and they're actually in the super regionals this weekend, so it's been awesome. And then just obviously the scholarship side, like you said, being able to bring people to Duke, and the recruiting like platform just changed really with the level of recruits that we could get with the scholarships. And so just again, just being able to provide that opportunity for more females in multiple sports, you know, at a great Division I program. So that was definitely huge.
So as you can hear, we have just made so much progress in recent years, but we're going to talk a little bit about where we still need to go and what's ahead of us, progress that needs to be made. Katie, I'm going to look to you first. Carolyn mentioned the media ability to get on TV, and that's really made a lot of progress, but I know in women's hockey, a lot more exposure is needed. Where do you see those inequalities persisting, and what still needs to change in your mind?
Visibility is so important. At the Olympics, 1/2 of the hockey arena was media from across the world. And so, you know, I know in women's hockey, the pro level athletes, the national team players continue to try to get more opportunities to be seen beyond every 4 years. And during those 4 years, there's a huge spike in the amount of interest in the game. And so just media presence is huge across the board. And as Carolyn mentioned, I mean, you can turn on your TV now and flip through and see collegiate pro level sports and the women's games across many sports. And it's so great for people to see sports in different capacities. So beyond, you know, being able to go watch a game, being able to see it on TV, and social media has played a big role in it as well, and investing in the women's game, whether it's supporting different programs financially or attending or buying season tickets, but just finding ways to support women's program is huge as they're all trying to continue to build.
Dawn, talk about how coaching figures into the equation and as we look at progress that still needs to be made.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually in a group of 10 women coaches, amazing women who are coaching across the country. And we're in this group because we support each other. And honestly, the fact that we even have to be in a group to support each other in the sport, it shows how few coaches, female coaches, are still in the sport of swimming. But, you know, these amazing women are now starting to get head coaching jobs. And that is, you know, obviously huge progress. It has been typically a male-dominant head coaching position kind of sport. And so we are finding now that there are more not only female coaching females, but female coaching combined teams. And so that's, I think, a huge progress. But there's still, not only in the sport of swimming, but there are in many sports still where men are being hired for female sports. And I think that's definitely somewhere that we can see some progress. And, you know, like you said, it's women supporting women, but it's also men supporting women. And, you know, being able to, at the higher level, at the athletic director level, being able to, you know, there are amazing women who are coaching, and being able to put them in that position, you know, to coach female sports. I think that would be another step in moving forward.
Thank you, Dawn. Carolyn, I'm going to ask you a different question, but because you have the context of living through this, when the NCAA integrated women's sports, so we went away from the old AIAW, and the NCAA started sponsoring women's championships, and money grew a bit from the $500 to still not big salaries, but the money started to grow. I know when you look at the trend data over time, the women's the head coaching jobs of women's sports really plummeted, and more men started taking those opportunities. And over time, we've really seen a big increase. And at Brown, I'm really proud for the fact that the majority of our women's sports are coached by women. But those combined positions tend to still be male coaches, but again, making some inroads. And if you don't know, in football, we actually have a female position coach. Our quarterbacks coach is a woman. So seeing some inroads, but again, still a lot of progress to be made. But I don't know if you want to comment, because you've kind of seen that down and now coming back up. And
see right now is, from where I sit, we still have to continue to mentor women in their professions, whether they're in the coaching or the sports performance or the director of ops, because it's an easy out to not want to get into the grind. So, and that's listening to people, and that's taking the time to hear whatever their issue is at the time, and also the coaches listening to each other, because they have to really support each other. It is a whole different landscape now with coaching. But I think, and I'm still doing it, some of the coaches still call me at Brown, and just to go through things, and I'm a safe person, they trust me. And I can say, I think you're out of bounds. I think you should need to calm down and go back, and the next day is going to happen and everything's going to be okay. Or let's get you some help with what you need. So I think this is a tough profession. It's a tough dynamic, athletics. And if you don't have the right people around you and staff, and that's head coaches, administrators, you're going to really struggle, and it can really get to you.
And now the real question you were tasked with is what you see as important to keep things moving in the right direction as far as equity and inclusion. What most comes to mind?
Money, no. I think we have to continue to empower our coaches and our teachers to help us find ways to continue things going forward and be more inclusive to people's ideas. And not just from the top down, but to listen to everybody in a department or on a team or your second assistant, and not be as headstrong about everything that you do. And I think you have to work as a team to get things to move forward.
And sorry, I'll just add to that too. Just going back to like visibility and putting people in higher positions. I mean, I obviously want to just bring to the fact that you're an athletic director as a female, and I have an athletic director at Duke as a female, that's Nina King, and there are more and more women getting into that position, and I think it just shows younger kids that athletics, younger females, that athletics is something that you can get into and that you're doing it at a high level. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And one that I'd like to add too, 38 years ago, I would never think we would have a woman president, a woman AD, and a woman general counsel at Brown, who also played field hockey and lacrosse.
Yeah.
That is progress.
That absolutely is progress. So I knew this was a remarkable panel, but it is the first time I've had a panel that's actually ended the planned remarks exactly on time, because what we want to do is to give you an opportunity to ask questions of these fantastic women. And we have a couple of women with microphones in the back. So I see one hand up over here. If you do have a question, raise your hand and we'll get you a mic.
Ebru Köksal, I'm class of 90. Title IX didn't come my way, unfortunately. I was a water polo player. It was a club sport when I was here. But I actually started out as an investment banker and found myself in administration side of sports, global sports. I was the CEO of Galatasaray, the leading soccer club in Europe for many years, and a board member, and then worked with FIFA and UEFA. And more importantly, now I chair an organization called Women in Football. It's an NGO that has more than 6,000 members, who is trying to level the playing field for women in the boardroom, women in senior management. And to answer your question about progress, I think it's quite important that we find a way to translate Title IX into the boardroom and to the senior management, because we know that diverse boards and diverse senior managements actually take those right decisions to ensure that there are more equality, let's say, and equal opportunities at all levels. So all the women who had the opportunity to do high-level sports, how can we keep them in the sports world as high-level administrators, presidents? Cindy Cohn is a wonderful example. She finished off the collective bargaining agreement and equal pay for U.S. women's soccer, something that Carlos Cardero or Sunil Gulati couldn't do. So I think that's really the part we should all focus on. I don't know what you think about that, but.
Yeah, well, first of all, a comment, a response, and I want these ladies to respond as well. Kim, make sure you're getting contact information, because it sounds like you need to be on our next panel. That would be a fantastic topic. One thing that always comes top of mind to me, not directly answering your question, but when I look at trying to keep good people involved in sport, and particularly good women. I had, as one of my NCAA responsibilities over the years, I was chair of the NCAA Research Committee for a number of years, and looked at all the data and continued to be very close with the lead NCAA folks in the research area. So they would always give me data that wasn't necessarily public data. And I really found it interesting that, and Carolyn, you probably found this, if you look at the women who were in sports early on, I've had so many tell me the story of really having to make tough choices in a lot of ways. Did you want to pick pursuing a career or pursuing a family or other personal considerations, because it just what was required and how all-consuming it was. I dare say probably a lot of discrimination against the opportunity to do both. And even what you were sharing today, Dawn, as being a fantastic coach, 3 children, but these are really tough careers in a lot of ways. You're on the road so much competing. You're on the road recruiting. You're certainly not working a 40-hour week, probably not even a 60-hour week. Really tough. And so one thing that I've always been very passionate about as a mother of 4 was, I said, whether people accept it or I'm criticized for it, I am going to completely integrate all aspects of my life, because it's the only way I can feel good about being a mother and a athletics professional. And I did some things that were really risky in a lot of ways. I was on this very high level NCAA U.S. Olympic Committee task force. I had a 1-week-old baby, and I was super conflicted. I obviously couldn't leave the baby, but I knew, I was one of only 3 people representing collegiate sports interest and didn't want to miss that opportunity. So I basically wrote to everyone and just kind of sort of asked, but sort of told, and said, just to let you know, I'm going to be coming with a 1-week-old baby. And I sat through 3 days of meetings with a baby on my lap. And I promise you, I was getting these looks of disdain for the first day. People are like, I can't believe this woman, what the heck she's doing. By the 3rd day, the older men were asking to hold the baby. And, I just felt like I often say, we make our personal choices. I certainly never subject my choices on other people. But Britt, it delights me to see you brought your daughters to this. And I think we have really tried to foster an athletics department where people feel very comfortable, very welcome, having children around, integrating personal life. So I try to model little things that hopefully make people feel more comfortable, that they don't have to choose one or the other. More specifically to your question, does anyone want to speak to personal experience or anything else to the question?
From the officiating side of the game, did I just see that in the Men's World Cup they're using 3 females? So I think that's huge progress. Soccer is certainly a bit above hockey. I was actually just talking to Britt yesterday about several years ago, she was on the NCAA field hockey tournament committee, and they made an active decision to use all females in their NCAA tournament. It was the first year it was nationally broadcasted on TV, and so I think that's huge for girls and boys to see that there are female officials at the highest level of the NCAA tournament field hockey. Hockey's not quite there yet, but hopefully we have other Brits on the committee going forward that can help get our sport there.
Hi, thank you so much for this really wonderful conversation. I am curious whether or not you feel that there are style differences in your leadership roles because you're a woman in the sports arena. And I don't make assumptions, but there's certainly a lot of conversation in other institutions about the culture that women leaders bring to business, to nonprofits, and so on and so forth. And, not asking for stereotypes, but there are some, and I'm wondering whether you could comment on that.
So for me, because I was usually the only woman in the room for probably about 20 years, when I started wearing my national championship ring to meetings, all of a sudden I got the attention of everyone. I could have been the worst player on my team, maybe, and that was really interesting to me, because we get in the room and before you start the meeting, we start talking, and I got an Ivy championship, this and that. And I said, well, I won a national championship. And that really resonated with the men. And it also really resonated with our men's coaches. When I would come in to talk to their teams, they were like, she was on a team that won a national championship. So I thought that was really interesting as far as the dynamic and the culture. Everyone loves a winner.
I certainly felt early on that I needed to be over-prepared, overqualified, constantly justifying why I was in the room or part of conversations. And then after having enough success and track record, then I felt it almost became the opposite. I had to downplay some of that so as to not get people off put, or there is also I would say I have definitely felt the just that feeling that there some different expectations. I'm being gentle in how I say this, but how they're expecting that the woman is going to be more caring, more nurturing, more sensitive, and it's a tough business for tough people. You got to make a lot of really tough decisions, and but I always have tried to just to not accept, but to be cognizant of what the preconceived notions might be coming in, and how I'm just stylistically have worked to kind of show that toughness, but the warmth, the compassion. But I do hear from female peers all the time that some of the stereotypical things that perhaps a male could do aren't received as well by a female. But definitely the credibility, we've kind of lived the experience, have the qualifications. In athletics administration for so many years, if you weren't the football coach, you weren't qualified. And it's like, well, how many of, or even for the males in athletics, how many actually, did some of the things they're being asked to do in these administrative roles. So just kind of dispelling that, those things are needed, that we've got the qualifications, the background, and can really fulfill these roles as well as anyone. It's credentials based.
Yeah, and I think, for me, you use the term nurturing, and sensitive. I wouldn't really say I'm a sensitive person, but I definitely, I think I embrace the nurturing, like as a coach and, as a female coach of a combined program, you do kind of take on like the mother role. And sometimes I think I resented that, in that like I didn't want to be your mother, I want to be your coach, but they're also looking for somebody to be a nurturer. And so they often do look to the woman for that. So in some ways I did embrace that. But I think on the flip side of that, then when you did want to be tough, then it seemed like, then who are you? Like what's happening here? Like you're supposed to be taking care of us. You're supposed to be nurturing us. So there's definitely like that kind of like dichotomy of like, how do you make this work together? And so I think in a lot of ways I try to more embrace the nurturing and kind of take people under my wing in that way.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to just ask a quick question, maybe of Carolyn, but anyone can take it. So, I'm the leader of the Brown Sports Foundation, which is our fundraising arm for athletics, and I'm the first woman to do this job. I had 5 predecessors, all males, all kind of revered in their own way by Brown University because they were all so good at the job. Long story short, when I came to campus to do this job in 2016, I just remember I realized in that moment, oh, this was very male driven for a long time. And now I'm here. And I realized it after I took the job, right? And I thought to myself, oh, I didn't see this pressure coming. And so, there's not a ton of females leading fundraising at the highest levels for athletic departments. It's more of a male-driven position. So long story short, when I get here, we're working on a football facility project, a $12 million project that was going to touch a lot of people from one of our most visible programs and one of our most, just donors in that to that program have been incredibly generous, and it runs really deep, the amount that they care. And so anyway, long story short, I have this project, and it's a $12 million project, and it was a really steep hill, and the whole time I was just losing sleep thinking, okay, if I don't get this over the finish line, they're all gonna think a woman can't do this job. And so, has there been a moment where there's the extra pressure of like, I don't wanna fail because then I fail women in your different realms?
So just to your situation, I think what's really interesting, I think this is inherent at most universities. When Kim first came on board, because Kim was an Olympian, she played women's ice hockey, was people were calling alums like, who's this Kim girl? What do you think she's going to do? And the minute one Brown alum says, she's fine, everybody just moves on to the next thing. So, but she had to prove herself. She's raising the money, and she's done a great job for what we're trying to do, moving everything forward.
Did either of you have the experience that Kim describes of feeling like it's not just your personal success or failure, but you've got that added responsibility for women? And I felt it squarely with the engineering, Kim, as I described. I felt like, I was the only one in a lot of these classes, and I didn't like it at all, but, feeling like I can't drop out. And at different times, yes, I've certainly felt like there, that you look at, and maybe it's because I really don't go through a week without student athletes or girls, commenting and saying it's great to see an example of how you can do this. So feeling like want to be one of those people that helps to open those doors and hopefully give those opportunities. And I'm seeing some of our women coaches shaking their heads because I'm sure they felt that same way. But have you women experienced that?
Yeah, I would say yes. And I think for me, that was actually when I decided to stop coaching. That was a tough decision for me because it definitely made me think like I'm failing the female coach. And, and I can think like after I had my third child, like people being like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You're still doing this. How are you doing this? Like, I'm so proud of you, like stuff like that. And so then 2 years later, I'm looking at leaving the sport, and that to me felt like a little bit of a pressure of I'm showing that it can't be done, but it obviously can be done. But it goes back to, like you said earlier on in the conversation, just personal decision. And for me, it was the right decision for my family. But I definitely had that little nagging, like, am I showing that this can't be done? But that's the pressure that I felt. But again, it was just the right decision for my family.
And for me, I didn't get an opportunity to work with Grace, but I was 38 years in, and I started to feel like, I think it's time for a new voice and a new vision. And do I have the energy to recreate myself with a new administration? Absolutely not. And I think, but I was at the point, I've done the best I could, and I can help the university and students and coaches in different ways.
And for me as a referee, everyone in the arena hates us, so it doesn't matter, male or female. But certainly, every time early on doing the men's games, I put my arm up in the air, and there was some boos in the crowd. I would think, are they booing because I'm a female official, or are they booing because I'm an official? And it wasn't until walking into a men's game with my officiating crew, and the equipment manager of the team, when we got there, said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize there was going to be a female official here. I don't have a locker room for you." And one of my peers said, "She's not a female official, she's an official." And so for me to have the support of my peers, that's all I need. I don't need 4,000, 10,000 fans to support me. I just need my team on the ice to support me, and then I know I'm supported, and I'm one of the officiating crew members out there, and I have all the support I need.
Well said.
Well, I think we are at noon on the nose. I want to thank all of you for coming and being part of the conversation. And if you have thoughts, ideas, suggestions going forward, we do really hope to do some more things to celebrate Title IX in the upcoming year. So please approach me, approach Kim, or Martha or Wendy, and we'll see what we can do to keep the conversation going. Thank you.